Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce my guest today, John Neral. John reawakens, energizes, galvanizes, and innovates the mind think of employees, corporations, associations, and people. A celebrated executive career and professional development coach, an in-demand mindset-shifting public speaker, John's professional walk included serving as a former professional development manager of an instructional coaching program at the District of Columbia Public Schools System, a 16-year mathematics teaching veteran, a state educational assessment specialist, and a long-standing corporate consultant for Fortune 500 giant Casio America Inc. and a training and staffing director for an educational nonprofit. He now leads John Neral Coaching, LLC, one of the most progressive mindset-shifting professional and organizational coaching and public speaking firms in the U.S., and is the author of the new book, Show Up: 6 Strategies to Lead a More Energetic and Impactful Career. A former church organ prodigy, John is an avid traveler, having sojourned to 5 of the 7 continents, a professional bowler and the winner of the Professional Bowlers Association regional title in 2010, and a game show fan, having appeared on previous episodes of GSN's Chain Reaction and Make My Day. John is happily married and lives with his spouse and their rescue cat, Amy Farrah Meowler, named after the Big Bang Theory character, in the heart of Washington, D.C.'s dullest technology corridor, Tyson's Corner, Virginia. Welcome, John.
Well, Tammy, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you today. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, me too. So, John, as you know, the title of this podcast is Work from the Inside Out. And we talk a lot about the twists, the turns, the trajectories that people have taken over the years in their careers. Clearly, you are one of those people. And you also are in a field where you help others in the same way. So take us back to some of your earlier years and how those years progressed and led up to where you are now.
Well, the title of your podcast definitely interested me, and I've enjoyed listening to some of your episodes. So I can go back and I can clearly define a pivotal moment in my life when I was 10 years old.
Ooh.
So being a huge Golden Girls fan, I'll give you the reference here. So picture it, Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey, 1979. So I'm the youngest of 3 children. My parents often described me as a change of life baby in that they had me at 42 and 43.
Uh-huh.
So I do have 2 older sisters. And in 1979, obviously things were a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And when you grow up in a staunch Catholic family and one of your daughters, this happened to be my middle sister, she comes home and she says she had just graduated high school and she told them that she was pregnant. And needless to say, that didn't go over well. Mm-hmm. And as I have reflected and learned and everything, I think it's fair enough to say nobody handled it well.
Mm-hmm.
And from where my journey comes from that is that I was the little brother. I was the 10-year-old who was peeking through the banister from the 2nd floor of the house, peering down, trying to hear what was going on. And the screaming and the crying and the yelling and the door slamming and all of those kind of things. And my mom called me downstairs and she sits me on her lap and she looks at me with very, very wet eyes, right? She'd been crying and everything. And she looks at me and she says, what your sister did was very bad. And if you ever go to bed with a woman before you are married, I hope you see my face instead of hers. And at 10, I looked at her and went, okay. And I went back up to my room because
Right.
I didn't know everything that was going on, but I kind of was starting to figure out what exactly was going on. And the thought of getting a girl pregnant or even being attracted to girls wasn't something I was certain was in my future.
Yeah.
And what transpired from that event was really the defining focus for what it meant to show up. Because when you know the ground rules, you know how to play. And at 10, we look for our parent. I mean, in general, when you're children, you look for your parents to set the ground rules and you follow them because you want to be a good kid.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And it took me 16 years after that event before I finally came out to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it took 2 more years after that before I finally came out to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was 28. I didn't really even date until I was 26, 27. I mean, dated, like went on a date with another guy, right? And when I came out, I got disowned. And I will tell you, the 22 months that I didn't talk to my family is hands down some of the best lessons I've ever learned in my life. Because during that time, there were times leading up to the separation where we would talk. And a really phenomenal and dear therapist of mine, she said to me, never say anything you regret.
Mm-hmm.
And so even amid all of the fighting, the arguing, the questioning and all that kind of stuff, I always ended every conversation with, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if anything, God forbid it happened, that was the last thing I wanted them to know.
Yeah.
And we think about how we take these kind of lessons and we transfer them into our career. And we think about never saying anything you regret and don't put it into an email unless you understand the tone and all those kind of things.
Right, right.
Right. And these were really good lessons that I was learning and following. And in a really pivotal part to this whole story, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer and she wanted to see me. And at that point, Tammy, we started rebuilding the relationship. And it was like, look, I can understand you don't approve. You may not fully understand, but I'm still your son and you're still my folks. And I love you. And if there's a way for us to figure out what repairing this relationship looks like, I'm open to discussing it. But I'm not going to have you berate me and I'm not going to have you attack my character. I'm a 30-something-year-old man. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And my mom kind of looked at me and she was like, I don't need you to be a smart, snot nose either. And that was her kind of thing, right? Like, and she's like, or she'd be like, don't use that teacher voice with me. so God bless her, right? So it was all of these kind of things about how I was expected to show up for myself, for them, to have an intentional conversation, to protect and promote who I am and what I do. And my mom, and it's, by the way, it's really fitting. We didn't talk about this before, but the day that we're recording this, my mom passed away 9 years ago today.
Oh, wow.
And I feel her, I always feel her very close by, right? But like I particularly feel her close by, right now. And the fact that my mom passed away when she was 85.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she was willing to open up her eyes and her mind to see what could be. My mom lost her brother, whom she was extremely close to, and her husband of 55 years, all within the scope of a year. And in a pivotal moment, about 6 months after my dad passed, my mom looks at me and she goes, I don't know how you did it, how you do it. And I go, do what, Ma? And she's like, be alone. She goes, being alone sucks. And I said, Mom, it does. There are times when I like it and there are times when I don't. I said, but you and Dad were blessed to have 55 years together. I can't change whom I'm attracted to or who I may want to spend the rest of my life with. But there's so much more to a relationship than just the physical stuff that you keep tending to kind of focus on. It's about compassion and compatibility and relating to somebody. And why am I not entitled to have the same little bit of happiness that you did? And you think about having a conversation like that, it's not easy.
Right.
But that conversation was one of many that moved our relationship forward.
Well, and it enabled you, and not just you, but her, to show up more fully with each other.
Yeah.
Right. And I just want to go back to that 22 months because you said that there was a lot of learning that happened then. Would you say that there was a lot of learning about how you showed up in your life, in your work, in many ways? What was the what were you doing in your life at that time when you were not, sort of separated from your family? I'm assuming that your siblings were also separated from you at that time?
Yes. Right. So what I learned through that whole time, especially, was that we have family of origin and we have family of choice.
Yeah.
And family of choice being the friends whom we keep really close by that are there for us whenever we need. And what I often say is that they were there for me when my family of origin couldn't.
Yeah.
Right. So to build those kind of friendships, these are lasting friendships. These are friendships that are 20, 25 years long,
right,
that I treasure and I value so much. I mean, that was one of the things, but at the same time, I had just finished my master's degree. I was back in school working on what ended up being the equivalent of a second master's, because we know in education, the way you get further across the guide is the more credits over your master's.
Right.
I was back in school. I had just started my teaching career in a wonderful district in northern New Jersey. And so I was learning my craft. I was trying to be a really, really good teacher.
You were teaching math, is that right?
I taught middle school mathematics in
that's right.
New Jersey.
I remember us talking about middle school. I remember saying, you taught middle school, bless you.
Right.
And you taught middle school mathematics. The combination of the two just makes me think you are a hero. But go on. So so in this time of, really a lot of personal turmoil, let's say, you were in the middle of building your career as a math teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what's the first focus we have when we start in a new job, especially when we're young? We just want to be good at it.
Right.
We don't want to mess up.
Yeah.
Right. So here were all of these things that were going on with me personally that were jumbled and turned upside down and trying to figure all of that.
Right.
And then I'm standing in front of a room full of middle schoolers teaching them math, being like, let's not screw this up. let's do a really good job, because if you ever want really good feedback on how you're doing in a given day, do that and deliver that in front of 25 middle schoolers, because they'll tell you right off the bat.
There's no filters in middle school.
Exactly. So there was all of that thing. And then you figure out where you're living and how you're trying to save for a house and how do you advance your career, and then trying to figure out how to date on top of all of this and what that looks like, and not run yourself into credit card debt and all of those kind of things. It was like getting slapped upside the head and being like, great. So all of the lifelines that you used to have, they're not there anymore. So if you're going to fail magnificently, but it's on you.
And it sounds like
nobody's there to pick you up.
Yeah. And it sounds like, that it was almost a perfect storm in some ways. Um, and and you didn't know that you were ever going to talk to your family again during that period. So it sounds like you were trying to build a life for yourself
Right.
on every level, including, building your professional credentials. But you didn't know that you would ever talk to your family again during that time.
No, and when I came out to them, and so we're talking 1998.
Mm-hmm.
I had been dating somebody, and the relationship was pretty serious. And so, of course, that was a big impetus to come out and tell them. But then, in the course of the separation from my family, my relationship ended. And so here I am trying to figure out how do you break up? How do you end a relationship that just isn't right, quote unquote, anymore?
Yeah.
And figure all of those things out. And you don't have your family nearby, right? They're not there to kind of be there to support you or cheer you or pick you up in that regard, because they've chosen not to. And I chose not to as well.
Right. And then on top of it, you're facing a room full of middle schoolers every day.
Yeah, they were a stabilizing force, though, let me tell you, because I just channeled myself into my work in a lot of ways, right? And that was, you go in there and you kind of be like, all right, whatever problems I got, I'm going to leave them on the door handle of the school, because they'll be there when I pick them up on the way out. But when I come in here, you got to give it my all.
So clearly, we are sitting here today, and we read your bio, so we know that somehow you put one foot in front of the other, and you have an enormously positive spirit. But you did come back together with your family, and it sounds like you probably even helped your mother through some difficult years for her. And you taught math till when? What was a pivot point there for you?
Yeah, so I taught math until 2010, and around 2006, I was starting to look for some kind of advancement. So it was a department chair's position or a supervisory type role, and I started interviewing in other districts and trying to find that out. It was in 2008 that I met my now husband, Richard.
Oh, okay.
And so we ended up having a long distance relationship for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So his job was really, really good. And I was the one that was looking for something more. And I told him that I'd be happy to come down to Washington, D.C., but I would only do it if I got a job. And so when the position opened up with DC Public Schools to be what at the first time was a professional development specialist that transitioned into being one of the managers for their instructional coaching program, it fit very well in line with all of the teaching and the consulting work and the coaching work that I had been doing in really working with teachers to help them move their practice to directly impact student achievement.
Yeah. So that was really a step up for you, and it was a change of pace, but yet building on a lot of expertise that you had built up in the classroom all those years.
Absolutely.
And so you did that for the next couple of years, right?
So interestingly enough, I did it for 14 months.
Ah, okay.
And then I pivoted and I went to go work for the state superintendent of education in DC. So even though DC is not a state,
right,
if you treat it like it is, it has a state education office, which we call OSSE. It's the Office of the State Superintendent of Ed. And that's where I went and worked as a math and science assessment specialist. And I was there for 14 months.
Oh, okay.
Then I pivoted again, and that's when I went to go work for the educational nonprofit, where I started off doing content development. So basically, our work was I was writing content for large-scale summative assessments for students across the country.
Wow. So, so what was it like after having been in the classroom for so long to then go through sort of a series of pivots what sounds like was on a fairly regular basis for a while. I mean, you moved to DC, then you started in one job. 14 months later, you were in yet another job. And even though they were all in education, having done some work in education myself, I'm having a picture of, definitely some different types of work cultures, work environments, and definitely I can imagine that the flow and the pace of your days was quite different in each role. So I'm curious what that was like for you to change jobs so many times.
And then doing it in your late 30s through your 40s.
Yeah.
Like in the mind, I'm going, you should have had this figured out by then, right?
Well,
but it doesn't always, but our career paths aren't linear, as we know, right?
We know that for sure.
Yeah. And then of course I had this whole personal component that was I was really, really happy about. But when I pivoted, I was going to pivot anyway because I wasn't quote unquote happy with what I was doing.
Okay.
So when you stand up in front of a room of middle schoolers and you're talking about linear equations, or you're talking about fractions, or you're talking about some geometry topic, and you stand there and as you're instructing, you have this moment where in your head you're going, dear Lord, how many more years am I going to end up doing this? Right? And you go, wait a minute, this isn't fair to the kids.
Right.
And this isn't fair to me either.
Mm-hmm.
So the pivot was welcomed. I wasn't expecting that I was going to sell my house and move 250 miles and all this kind of stuff. And then you get into an administrative type job. And what I learned was that having your finger on the pulse of what I was feeling and what I thought was going to be the next move or what I could potentially see coming was going to serve me really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
So to not be afraid of the pivot, but to be open and welcoming to these new opportunities, to keep them fluid.
Yeah.
So when I was working at the state superintendent, my boss, who she had left the organization, she had encouraged me to apply at this educational nonprofit. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I don't meet the job descriptions. I don't think I'm good enough or whatever. I'm not going to do it. And she looked at me and she goes, just apply.
Yeah. I tell people that all the time. I mean, how many of us, this is for my listeners, how many of us see a job description and say, I'm not qualified? Because some people read the job description so literally, and they're being so much their own critic, they think they don't qualify. And so they reject the job before the job rejects them. Right? So clearly you went ahead and applied.
I did.
Yeah.
And I thought, Tammy, I bombed that interview. It was a half-day interview. I thought I bombed it. And I'm sitting there and I'm interviewing with the person who is eventually going to end up being my boss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 4-hour interview type cycle. I want to say I'm in like hour 3.
Uh-huh.
And I'm thinking I bombed the interview. So I'm like, what do I got to lose, right? Let's get the experience. Let's figure what this is all about and everything. And she looks at me and she goes, why should we hire you? And I thought, I spent 14 years in a district in northern New Jersey. I spent 14 months at DCPS. I spent 14 months at OSSI. I'd like to get to 15 somewhere. Do you want to give me a chance? And there was this awkward pause. And in that silence, I kind of waited a couple seconds and I go, all joking aside, here's why you hire me. You hire me because I know how to work with people and I know how to build teams. And so if there's a position here where you need support in rebuilding a team or pulling a team together, I have that experience. And if my content experience is good enough where you can leverage me as an item writer or in something in that capacity and you think this is a good fit because my skills are going to help you out, that's why you hire me. I get hired. I'm on the job 3 months. Same boss walks into my office and closes the door. And I go, I'm going to get fired today. right? First thought, right? We let our inner voices and our critics and stuff just get right up to the top of our minds and what we're thinking. And I immediately thought the worst. And we sit down and she looks at me and she goes, "You're doing a good job." So I kind of breathed a little bit. She goes, "You're really good with the team." And I said, "Well, thanks. It's important for me to know everybody I'm working with and make sure I'm getting to know them and what they're doing and everything." She said, "John, it's not just the people on our team." She goes, "Everybody on the floor knows you." She goes, "85 people basically know you. How did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I can't really sit in this office really long. So every time I get up, I walk around the hall. I happen to see people's names and faces that are put on the placards outside of their doors, and I kind of memorize them. And then when I see them at the coffee machine, I introduce myself to them because it's a more appropriate and less awkward than trying to introduce yourself to someone in the bathroom." Right? She kind of laughed, right? Because no one needs to be called into HR. So she looks at me and she goes, "That's brilliant." She goes, "I don't know if you noticed or not, I'm not really good with the team." And I go, "I have." And she goes, "Oh, wait a minute." I said, "You walked into my office and closed the door. How do I help you?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? That question alone
Mm-hmm.
is where we get to exercise our value.
Right.
And she
What a
looked at
great example of managing up.
managing up, right?
Right.
And she looked at me and she goes, "I'm overwhelmed. I'm overstressed. I'm trying to keep everybody happy. And the one thing I'm not doing is taking care of this team. I hired you because I thought you'd be really good at helping me out with the team." So essentially, I moved into this role where I was basically her right arm and helping her with all of the staffing and training initiatives with the team. It was things about hiring people and doing trainings and talking with her about who was going to leave, because that's part of keeping a team moving along, is you got to backfill and train up on positions and things like that. And I'm very proud to say, in some of what is undoubtedly my best work, is that in the scope of about 8 months of some really, really hard work and a lot of partnerships, we turned that team around.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we know you're no longer there. What was the next pivot point? And tell us. I know you from there you went to starting your own company, I believe. Right. So I'm curious, what made you decide to start your own company, and who are you working with these days? And tell us about your book.
Sure. Thanks. So I was at this educational nonprofit for 5 years, and after a couple of reorgs, I didn't land exactly in a great spot, I thought.
Okay.
And I was doing a lot of onboarding and still doing some training, but I really looked at the org chart and thought there's really nowhere for me to go. So I had moved to a position where I was directly reporting to the vice president of the division. And I went into her office one day and I said to her, "I need to ask you a question. Can I ask it?" And she's sitting at her desk and she's like, "Yeah, sure." And I said, "I'm going to ask you this question because I trust you. And I trust you that you're going to give me an honest answer. And however you answer this, I promise you the first thing I'm going to say is thank you. Can I ask it?" She's like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead."
What? How about that for setting the stage, huh?
Right. So I got permission. Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, I've got to go ask for what I want. What I want's information. And I said to her, "I'm trying to figure out my career path here. And the way I see it, it is at best horizontal. So while I'm not at risk of getting fired or let go today, the fact of the matter is that what I do is basically kind of put me on an island. And what that means is that I'm not getting promoted. I'm not going to see any kind of substantial raises. I don't see any kind of bonuses in my future. And what I'm asking you is, how accurate am I?" And at that point, Tammy, she looks at me and she goes, "You're very smart. They just don't get what you do." And they meaning the people who, like the senior executives and the C-suite and all that. She's like, "They just don't get what you do." she's like, they don't see the interactions that you have with people to help retain them, and all the coaching and stuff that you do. And I had been organically coaching on the job anyway. And it was
Right.
during those 5 years where I went and got certified, and I went through IPEC,
Right.
the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, and really had every intention of bringing a coaching program internally. And that wasn't in their vision.
Right.
And that was okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're the bosses, they're the leaders, they're driving in the way that they feel is best. And if coaching wasn't part of their executive vision or plan, or saw me as the person to do it, the fact that I was able to see all of that really was the last piece of information I needed. Because shortly after that, I went back to my VP and I very gratefully resigned.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did, I said to her, I have an opportunity to serve more people outside than in, and I'm ready to take the leap.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I get to do today is I get to work with people who are passionate about their careers, primarily mid-career professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversations we have is around how they want to create their next advancement opportunity, and how they want to do that by how they choose to show up. And so what showing up is, and all of the lessons that I've gotten from it, both from my personal as well as professional life, is that it is a very concrete and tangible energy that we bring to situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so how we show up matters. It's how we connect with people, and it's also how we can disconnect from people as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conversations that I have with my clients is more about who they are and what they do. We certainly cover some of the logistics about job searches and resumes and LinkedIn and all those kind of things. But the work around showing up is about their unique professional value,
Right.
and where they get to make their impact.
Right. Got it. Yeah, definitely. And your book, Show Up, 6 Strategies to Lead a More Energetic and Impactful Career, really outlines a lot of the principles and steps that people can take to show up a whole lot better, so that when they go to work every day, or whatever they're doing daily, hopefully they're happy where they are.
Exactly. And so what I was finding in my work at the nonprofit, and even before that a little bit too, but especially as I started working with clients one-on-one, was that I would hear them say, I feel like I need to show up differently, or I need to show up more. And show up kind of became this buzzword where I equate it to when somebody walks into an interview and they say to the hiring manager, you need to hire me because I'm a team player. And my question was always, how do you play on a team? Because I don't know if you play on a team the same way I do.
Right. Well,
Right?
and
So this was an
what's
opportunity.
your definition of team? I mean,
Yeah.
it can be all over the place. People say teamwork all the time, and I think the way they show up in a team is very different. You know, what I love about your book is that it's really it makes the key points that you want to make about showing up, but it also gives people the opportunity to use your book as a personal journal or workbook in and of itself, because there's exercises in here, there's places where people can answer questions. It gives people opportunities to do some self-discovery and to assess and evaluate the situations they're in, or the situations they want to show up in. And so it's not just a book that you read to sort of tell you what to do. It's really the kind of book that really guides you to be who you want to be out there.
Well said. Right. So it is this kind of tactical and strategic resource to really get you to think about what those 6 particular strategies mean for you and your career. And as I've had people read the book and report back to me and things, they've also said that it's helped them in their personal lives as well.
I think this applies to everything. I mean, we are here mostly to talk about, your formative years and how they led to, your professional development, but absolutely, there's no doubt that what you've put together here is really helpful to anybody who is trying to really walk in their own shoes in a very grounded and self-assured way, in a way where they can really own who they are. And it's limitless in my mind. You could hand this to a college graduate. You could hand this to somebody, even though I know you work mostly with mid-career people, you could hand your book to anybody at any stage of their career and they can get benefit out of it. It's a timeless book. And
thank
it
you.
also has a beautiful cover, by the way.
Oh, we did a lot of
cover.
work on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I encourage people to get their hands on it. Show Up, 6 Strategies to Lead a More Energetic and Impactful Career by John Neral. What else can people look forward to from you going forward? What else is happening?
So one of the big things that's happening right now, so of course, in a time of COVID where book tours and speaking engagements got shifted a whole little bit or got canceled in that regard. So one of the most exciting things I've got going on right now is something called a Show Up Challenge. And it is designed basically, if you think of it as a 3-month book club. So we take the strategies that are in the book and we break them down 2 strategies a month, or basically 1 every 2 weeks, to really dig really deeply into what those strategies mean for you, both professionally as well as personally. And the challenge combines elements of group coaching as well as one-on-one coaching.
Oh, that sounds so exciting. So where can people find out about all these things? How can they find you? How can they find out about the challenge?
Yeah, so definitely connect with me on social media, be it either on LinkedIn. You can find me at John Neral. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at John Neral Coaching. And you can certainly check out my website, which is johnneral.com. And you can email me at john@johnneral.com with any questions. But connect with me in any of those channels, and you'll certainly find more information about me and the challenge and what I do.
This is great, John. Thank you so much. And all of those links will be in the show notes, so people will be able to access them. So there is no excuse not to get in touch with John Neral. But this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing your story today and putting all the pieces together and helping us to understand how you, built your life and where it's come to today. And I'm excited for all the people who are going to benefit going forward from their work with you.
Well, thank you, Tammy, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And what I love about our conversation today, but in what you're doing with the podcast, is really a reflection that we get to this moment right now. So you and me sitting here, or anybody who is listening to this podcast, we get here because of the totality of our experiences. It's what shapes us and what drives us and defines us. And ultimately, it's how we show up. And in an unprecedented year like this, more than ever, how we show up matters.
Yes, it does. Well, thank you for showing up on Work from the Inside Out.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with John Neral. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his professional and personal journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at www.tammygoulerloeb.com. Just look for episode 093. Are you thinking about what your next professional move is going to be? Perhaps there was a thought or idea that was sparked by listening to today's podcast that you would like to put into motion in your life. Or maybe you're feeling a little stuck. Get specialized group and individualized support, insights, and accountability from a brilliant mix of professional women in a safe, non-judgmental, creative space. Join one of my small hybrid mastermind coaching groups starting on a rolling basis. You can learn more at https://bit.ly/navigating career change. If you were inspired by this episode with John, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.